there, welcome to Humans of Authenticity, and thank you for choosing my podcast. My name is Lily, and I'll be your host. Humans of Authenticity will share many heartfelt conversations with my guests on their stories and how they embrace their authenticity in all forms. Authenticity will be a buzzword unless we pause and reflect on what it means for us, for individuals like you and me. Join me in these conversations. In each episode, my guests will choose a keyword from a selection of 12, which will be used as the theme of the conversation. These keywords change frequently, so you will only hear the same keyword once. Enjoy the episode today. Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Humans of Authenticity today. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners first?
Yeah, hi V. Thanks for having me along. Great to see you again and great to be part of your podcast. My name's Andrew Gosbell. I'm an associations advisor. As you could probably tell from the accent, I'm Australian. I'm based in Melbourne, which is down south. And I've been in the association sector for many years in a number of senior executive and CEO roles. But now, coming towards the end of my career, I've taken a different path and I'm working in the advisor space. It's a consultancy role where I'm fortunate to be able to give back to the association sector based on my experience and lessons learned along the journey, and provide advice around the way associations work, how associations are governed, how you do strategic planning, how organisations and associations are structured, how boards work with management to achieve great outcomes for their members. That's a really interesting space that I'm working on at the moment, but it's on the back of a pretty diverse and interesting career.
Thank you. I'm always curious when talking with someone working in the consultant space for association. I'm hearing that you have a long career in association and then moved to the consultant space. What's the differences between working in these two perspectives in your opinion?
I think working as a consultant and advisor, you have the privilege to come into associations and see how they work and provide advice and support and an external perspective on what their challenges and issues are. But you're not really empowered to change anything. To some extent, you have to accept the limitations of your role of consulting, which is to be that sounding board, that person bringing a different perspective, or sometimes telling an association, its board or its management, things that they either already know or things that they need to know. So, your role in talking about the elephant in the room sometimes. And you're empowered to do that because you're not part of the association. You can step away. To some extent, there's a privileged position in being able to speak truth to an organisation when they can't necessarily do it themselves. But you're not empowered actually to drive the changes. You can suggest, encourage, but you can't enable an action. That's probably the biggest difference I've found moving from senior management in associations to working as a consultant advisor to the association sector.
Thank you for clarifying that. Let's go back to your stories. Could you share 3 things about you that you love?
3 things I love about me. I have had a really diverse career, so lots of great opportunities to experience a range of things. I hold that with a sense of privilege, but not entitlement. I started off my professional career a long way away from associations, and is often the case, isn't it, that you kind of fall into associations as your second or third career. I started off my working life as a vision scientist working for an eye surgeon and spent nearly 20 years in that role. And as part of that, I was able to do some postgraduate research and ultimately achieved a PhD. That was a really great achievement that I'm really proud of, but also several years on from that, I can look back and appreciate the lessons that I learned much bigger than just the research piece. I learned a lot about myself through that process. So I think that's one of the things that I've really liked about myself and my career is that it's been really diverse. From being a researcher, I had aspirations of academia and a research track. But because of the way that I did my research training, working full-time as well as being a researcher and studying part-time, I got to the end of it and realised that my dream of working in the tertiary sector as an academic was not going to work out. I had to accept that and think about, well, where do I go next? I ended up working in the university sector, but not working as an academic. I actually worked in project management for a period of time. That was really interesting too, and I learned a lot through that process because I got to see how organisations worked and how I could operate through project management as an internal consultant to the universities. And I was able to work with a lot of academics across a lot of disciplines, and it was a really interesting role. So I really enjoyed that. Then an opportunity came up through one of the projects I was working on to join one of the medical colleges in Australia. The medical colleges have a significant role in the training process, so training doctors to become specialists. And I was recruited into that role to lead their education department. It was a huge learning curve because I knew nothing about medical education and I knew nothing about senior management. And I think I kind of lucked into it because I'd been working in the university sector, and the CEO of the college at the time thought, oh, Andrew must know about how our tertiary education works, so he might be really good for this role. So yeah, I was on like such a steep learning curve around how associations work, how senior management works, how to lead a team. I had an executive assistant for the first time in my life, so how do I work with an EA and how does that person work with me? And yeah, so that was a really challenging but rewarding time. From there, I had some other roles in other medical colleges and medical peaks, ultimately a CEO role leading an organisation that supports trainee general practitioners, family physicians. And along the journey, I always enjoyed the opportunity to work with other people to enable them to achieve outcomes for their clients, their patients, that kind of thing. I've told a long story there, but I don't think I've really answered your question. I'm happy for you to ask the question again, but I think in telling a bit of my story around how I've landed where I have now probably gives a bit of context to who I am and what I value as a person.
Thank you for that. And you actually answer my follow-up question. I really love that you have a very diverse career, not only in terms of positions, but also in terms of industry and the people that you worked with. I can see a lot of learning curve at the same time embracing every opportunities on your way. In that journey, if there is one thing that is uniquely you, the one thing that has led you to the person you are today, what is it?
I think it's a willingness to take the opportunities when they come. I remember way back when I first started my career, I was invited to give a presentation about a particular technique that I was developing as a research presentation. And I didn't have the courage to do it. I thought, oh, I'm only just developing. What could I talk about? I'm just, I'm a young researcher. What do I know? So I made a pretty lame excuse around, well, I don't think I'm available on that day, and I haven't got enough research results to really talk to the topic anyway. It was a pretty mealy-mouthed effort in terms of copping out. And I kind of learnt from that actually I should have taken that opportunity, because I probably could have had some really good things to say, but I didn't take the opportunity. So my learning from that and how I've incorporated that into my life and not just my professional life, but my personal life as well, is that it's around when the opportunities are presented, just having a crack, just having a go and seeing where it takes you. I remember when the opportunity came up to take the role from project management into the medical colleges. And at the time it was like, well, gee, I don't know. I've never led a team before, let alone led a department, and this could go really badly because I have no experience. And there's that whole imposter syndrome thing, kicks in. But I think it's just having the courage to take the opportunity and accept who I am, going for it and seeing what happens. So I think that's probably my unique, and it's probably not that unique. I think it's a lot of people sort of hold those kind of things in tension. Yeah, that sort of imposter syndrome thing. When I'm talking to other CEOs and senior managers or people on boards, I often say, look, if there's anyone in the room here that tells me that they've never felt imposter syndrome, they've never felt like they don't deserve to be in a particular role, that they have doubts, then I just don't believe them. Because I think we all experience that from time to time. But it's how we accept that, deal with that, and move forward and take the opportunities despite our doubts, despite our misgivings, but knowing that and accepting who we are and being, I guess, as the theme of your podcast is, being our authentic selves in taking on opportunities is really important. That's been my approach. If an opportunity presents, sure, have a think about it, but don't step away. Have a go. Have a crack.
I love that story. I have two follow-up questions from that. If you were able to speak to your younger self at that point in time, what would you have told the young Andrew?
I would have taken him aside and said, look, stop being such a wuss. Stop being such a wimp. Here's a great opportunity. Go and do it. You might stuff up, but you're going to learn a lot from it anyway. And I think that's perhaps a maturity thing, as you get experience, you understand yourself a bit more, you become more accepting of yourself and of others, and you're less inclined to doubt your abilities. Still question whether you can do things, but experience has told you that, well, look, I've had a crack before, I've taken opportunities before, and it's kind of worked out. It may not have worked out how I thought it would. It definitely didn't work out how I might have planned things, but it was still a worthwhile, sometimes rewarding experience. So I would take my younger self aside and give myself a very stern talking to, yeah.
I haven't heard that expression for so long. So after that many years of experience, achievement, success, and learning, do you still have those moments of imposter syndrome these days?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So how do you navigate
I think
yourself out of it if you see it's coming?
but look, I think often you don't necessarily see it coming. It just sneaks up on you, and then suddenly you're thinking there's this sense of doubt and what am I doing here and why am I in this position? You know, surely there's somebody else who would be better to do this than me. And I think approaching it now is, well, you are in the position, so just give it your best shot and accept that while it might not be perfect in your eyes, in the eyes of other people, you're the person for the role. You're the person they're looking for to provide leadership, advice, reassurance, support. So I think it is around recognizing that everyone feels this way from time to time. You're not Robinson Crusoe. It's a very common experience. So it's part of being human to have doubts, but not letting those doubts overwhelm you. Recognize that they're there, not necessarily push through, but accept the doubts, move forward anyway with those doubts. And to some extent, they provide a reality check to you as well. So, it helps you sort of question what you're doing, what you're bringing to a situation. You're not coming in so full of yourself and so cocky that you're just going to do it all and you're going to be perfect. It's around, I think, accepting that you're a human and you will do your very best in the situation, and that's all you can really do. And being comfortable in accepting that as the reality.
Thank you. I think you are the first person who giving me an advantages of imposter syndrome being that reality check. I need to think through that a lot more. I think it's a good segue for us to move to the second part of this episode to talk about your chosen keyword. And the story you've shared so far sort of indicated that already, but can you tell our listener which word did you choose from the list that I provided?
Yeah, I'm betting they might have guessed already, hey V. The word is acceptance, and I know I've used that a little bit already in the conversation.
So in the context of authenticity, how do you interpret acceptance?
So look, I think about acceptance in three different ways. One is accepting self, so accepting who I am. And I touched on that in the previous part of the conversation a little bit about accepting that I'm not perfect, but that I can still do the best I can. And that's okay. So that's one part, accepting self. And another part of it is accepting others for who they are and approaching others with a fairly open approach without judgment, but more out of a sense of compassion and curiosity because they're a human too. And they, like me, aren't perfect, but they are still a valuable person. And then the third part of acceptance is accepting the situations that I'm in, being present in those situations and being aware of what the realities are and what is possible to change and what is not possible to change. And I think that's probably an interesting thing about acceptance. Acceptance is not a cop-out. It could be interpreted that way to some extent. Oh, I'll just, it is what it is. Meh, what can I do kind of thing. But I think acceptance is more around being real, being authentic, understanding who you are, who other people are, and the nature of the situation that you're in. And then through that acceptance, you can then sort of figure out what's possible, what you can do, how you can potentially change a situation, particularly if it's the situation is something you find difficult to accept. I think when it all boils down to things, there's only really one thing that you can have the power to change in that dynamic of three components of acceptance, and that is yourself. You're the only person, the only thing you can change is yourself, and your attitude, your approach, your perspective on a situation. You can't change the other person. You can't necessarily change the situation without necessarily changing how you are responding to that person or responding to that situation.
I think that it takes a really strong mind to really clarify the self, the others, and the situation, especially in the difficult situations where everything is just clouded our mind. This is fascinating. So let's unpack each of these elements. Let's start with accepting self. In your story earlier, and I noted down here that you say accepting the limitations of your role, your positions. And in the second stories, you also say that accepted that being an academic is not going to work out for yourself. Were there a pivotal moments that helped you realize that it's okay to accept the situations, and what led to that moment?
Know whether there are pivotal moments. I think time and reflection is more important, so not being able to pursue an academic career was something that I realised slowly over time. And while it was difficult, having time to reflect and think about other pathways and opportunities. And that sort of happened throughout my career. So, even in recent times when I've applied for new leadership CEO roles where I've been very passionate about the organisation I've applied to and gone through a recruitment process, been short, got down to the final two, and I've missed out. And hey, we've all been there. At the time, it really hurts. And it's hard to accept because you know in your heart that, I could have done that. I could have been a great academic, or I could have been a great CEO of this organisation, or I could have been a great leader of this department. But on reflection, as you sort of move away from that acute feeling of disappointment and rejection, and this imposter syndrome thing can sort of nibble away at you there as well, you realise, well, that's just the reality of the situation that I need to accept. So what do I do next? How do I move forward? How do I not spiral into a place of despair and stay there? What do I learn from this? I'm not a bad person just because this opportunity didn't pan out the way I thought it would. But there'll be other things that will come up. And I probably wouldn't be in my current role had I got another CEO role in recent times, for example. So, being kind to yourself and accepting who you are and the nature of the situation, and being able to change what you can and accept what you can't. There's the whole serenity prayer kind of rings true there, regardless of whether you sort of believe in a higher being or not. That sort of concept of being able to have the serenity to accept a situation, and having the courage to change, and having the wisdom to know when that's possible. I've kind of paraphrased the quote there, but I think there are elements there that sort of really ring true to me.
Thank you for that. I heard that there are a lot of moments where you had doubt and hesitance to take the first step to move forward with different options and new pathways. What motivated you to get out of that difficult situation?
Question. Look, I think some of it is around a desire to move forward, find ways in which I can contribute, a desire to try something new. So, hey, it might not have gone how I planned. I may not have got the role I was hoping for. I may not have been able to work on a specific project that I had hoped to have a substantive role in, for example. But there will be other opportunities and there will be other ways to progress. There will be other ways to contribute, to find satisfaction, to find challenge, to achieve things. Yeah. We can curl up in the corner in a fetal position, rock back and forwards and feel sorry for ourselves. And maybe we need to do that for a little while, just for a little bit of self-care and self-pity. But you can't live life like that. I think you've got to sort of go, well, look, there'll be other opportunities. Let's get up, crack on and see where the next door opens for us and where that might take us.
What I really love about this story is that you acknowledge that yourself is part of that equation. You give yourself a space to rest and to re-energize so that you can go back to the world and conquer the world again. Often we are our hardest critics, and if failure happens, it's easily to just blame things and take it really hard. So I love your approach and perspective.
Yeah, and look, yeah, probably part of my personality too. On the scale of things, I'm well towards the introvert side. When I was younger, just accepting that was difficult. You want to be out there and the fun guy and all that kind of thing. But I guess I'm still a fun guy, but I'm not that outrageous extrovert who's sort of the life of the party. And accepting that and accepting what that means in terms of how I work, how I live, and how I interact with people, and seeing it as a strength, not a weakness. So that ability to reflect, to think about things, to work through situations, and I guess have that reflective mindset that I think a lot of introverts have, and see that as a real strength, is part of me accepting who I am and what I can bring to a situation, bring to another person. Yeah.
I just thought of a great question for you since you brought up that you're an introvert. I'm an introvert myself as well, and it took me a long time to really accept and embrace it. I'm hearing some sort of a transition time when you use the introvert as the protection reasons to the time when you accept that it's okay to be an introvert and an introvert can win and can be successful in the world. Can you describe that transitions time for me? And can you describe yourself before and after for me?
I think you don't transition so much as accepting who you are and the strengths that come from your personalities. As an introverted leader, I can still walk into the room with gravitas, with respect, and I think being recognised for the role that I have. I think the advantage that an introverted leader has is being able to be reflective, being thoughtful, and engaging with people on a really deep level. I really like having conversations with people one-on-one or in small groups. I'm not big on sort of a big room of people, and sure, I get up and do presentations all the time, and that's part of my current role, but that's my professional outward face. Once the presentation's done, I really then need a bit of time to step back and recharge the batteries. I'm quite happy not to talk to anyone for a little while after I've led a workshop or given a presentation. I need a bit of downtime to re-energize myself. I get my energy from within and then can engage with people in a small group of people rather than sort of working the room and being the life of the party. I think personality doesn't really have a strong bearing on how you work as a leader. You can be an extroverted CEO or an introverted CEO and can be successful or unsuccessful for that matter. I think the personality thing is not important. I think it's how you understand yourself and how you work around that acceptance triad that we were talking about earlier, accepting yourself, accepting others, and acceptance of the situation, and knowing how you can change things through your leadership role to bring better outcomes for the situation and for others, and grow in yourself as well as part of it.
So after you have embraced the self-acceptance, do you discover any surprise? Do you see any new ideas, or did you observe any changes to yourself and to the network around you?
I think I'm just a bit kinder to myself than perhaps I was when I was younger. We are our own harshest critic, but that critical voice is a little bit quieter in my head now than perhaps it was when I was younger. Yeah, so I think it is just experience, maturity. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So do you have any mentor or role models or sources of guidance during this journey?
Yeah, I did. And I think that mentors are incredibly useful. I had a couple of really good mentors. I'm still good friends with. The mentor I'm thinking about at the moment, she was my boss at one stage. When I moved into senior management roles, I stayed in touch with her, and it ended up having a formal mentoring relationship for a while. And even after that formal mentoring relationship concluded, we continued to catch up, and from time to time I go to her for advice. It was great because she was supportive, but boy, did she challenge me. It was a sounding board with a sharp edge that actually helped me work through some of my imposter syndrome, not just doubting myself, but doubting the way I was going about leadership, and particularly in that early phase where I was on a huge learning curve. I was making it up as I was going along to a large extent, and just having somebody who was reassuring but also challenging. What do I do next? Well, what do you think you should do next? Tell me what you think you should do next, and let's explore it. It was a really great mentoring question and a great way for me to then bring that to the way I approach things. Now, when I'm faced with a challenge, a new project, a new initiative or something, it's like, well, what do I think I should do here, and why will that work, and what other alternatives are in front of me, and how will I go about it? So being more reflective and thoughtful. Mentoring gave me that learning, and now I'm in a privileged position where I'm able to mentor new CEOs, new senior managers, new board chairs, and a lot of it is around that sounding board that I can now be based on my experience, and asking them questions and providing them with suggestions around, well, have you thought about this? What are you learning from this situation? What do you think you need to do next? And let's test that. Yeah. So I think having a mentor where you have a safe space, a trusted dynamic, and a little bit of chemistry is so valuable to any leader or aspiring leader. I can't undervalue that experience. So your coaching and mentoring is really important, and don't sort of neglect the opportunities that can bring to you throughout your leadership journey, even when you sort of are towards the end of it. And at the moment, I'm currently chairing board of a large community health organisation, I wouldn't mind finding another board chair who I could have as, maybe not as a mentor, but as a bit of a sounding board. So that's what I'm looking for at the moment. I don't think your journey as a mentor ever concludes. While I'm mentoring other people, I still would value being mentored for some of the things I'm doing. You just need that sounding board to help you accept who you are, who you're working with, and the situations you're confronted with, and how you're going to work with them and through them. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that stories. I think your mentor asking really hard and sharp questions. I just have to ask you this question. What can a leader do to make the workplace better for introverted staff?
I think for a leader, regardless of whether their staff are introverted or extroverted, is understand the person. So recognize that every person comes to your organization, to your team, with their uniqueness, and respecting that. Your team, they're not a bunch of widgets. They're not a bunch of robots. If you want robots, go and get some AI to do stuff for you. You've got people, you've got humans in your team. So treat them with respect, seek to understand who they are and what motivates them, and then how you can align their motivation to what you're trying to achieve. And that way you can provide really authentic leadership to them, because you are setting a direction that they can buy into and that they can feel valued in making contributions towards that goal that you're trying to lead them to. So it's not a hierarchical leadership. It's more around a supportive leadership, coming alongside your team, be they introverts or extroverts or somewhere in the middle. And we're all kind of on the spectrum anyway, hey? And being authentic with them and accepting them as humans with strengths and weaknesses. No one's perfect, but everyone can have an opportunity to contribute and feel valued and feel that they are making a difference. And I think particularly in the association worldview, that's why a lot of people are involved, because they want to do something for the profession or the industry sector that their association is supporting.
Thank you. This is very motivational. We're getting to the last 3 questions, so thank you for spending your time with me. What's next in your coming 12 months?
It's not necessarily an easy question to answer, because I'm getting towards the end of my career. So I'm not necessarily looking for the next step up the ladder, so to speak. It's probably more being aware of opportunities as they come and still being willing to step through the door and explore where they might go. So I'm really motivated now, not by getting another notch on the CV, getting another tick on the resume kind of thing. It's more about, well, what opportunities are coming up where I can contribute, where I can give back. I'm in an incredibly privileged position. You know, I've got a doctoral qualification. I live in a wealthy country. I'm a white male. Doesn't get much more privileged than that, hey? So I think being aware of that, and then thinking about, well, how can I, from that position of an attitude of gratitude, how can I give back? How can I take opportunities that come that enable me to give back to my community, give back to the association sector, give back to my family and friends and my community. So that's kind of is what is motivating me going forward. It's not about, well, what's my next career move. It's around where are the opportunities that I can continue to make positive contributions and give back from my experience and my position of privilege.
I love that. So thinking about your chosen keyword, acceptance, how will you embrace acceptance so that you can enjoy this phase of your career?
I think some of it is just accepting where I am now. So when I stepped into my current role after being a CEO and a senior leader for several years, it was like, what am I going to be now that I'm not a CEO? How am I going to be seen? Are people going to think that I'm giving up, that I'm, stepping off the train and, life's passing me by and Andrew's heading off to retire and work on his golf handicap or whatever? I don't play golf too, by the way. So some of it was accepting the fact that, well, look, actually, it doesn't really matter. These are things that are in my mind around who I am, and now, like, who I am, I'm no longer those things. And those people who care about those things don't really matter to me. The people that matter to me don't really care about what title I have or what position I take or what leadership role I would have or don't have. So I think accepting that a different phase of my career, and I'm actually able to do some really interesting and some really valuable things that I'm enjoying, but also feeling like I'm having opportunities in front of me to give back and support others, I'm finding to be incredibly powerful and incredibly uplifting to me as a person. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm loving that sense of acceptance, and I can see that you embrace new opportunities as they come up. Thank you for sharing that. We're getting to the last question of this episode.
Sure.
Now, if you were going on a dream vacation tomorrow, what is the one item that you must take with you and why?
Look, that's a really easy one to answer. I'd be taking my running shoes. I love running. That's part of who I am and part of being an introvert. For me, going on a long run, getting outside, for me, particularly in Australia, running trails in the bush is incredibly energizing and a great time to reflect. And as an introvert, you sort of love doing that kind of stuff. You're in your head, but you're out there as well. So putting a pair of running shoes in would be what I'll be doing. And my dream destination would be somewhere where I can go for a fantastic long run and just soak in my surrounds, and at the same time be in my head, be in my space. Yeah, that would be the first thing in my suitcase. And look, when I'm traveling for work at the moment, or for pleasure for that matter, the first thing that does go in my suitcase are my running shoes. They're always first thing in.
That sounds really cool. Thank you for that. And this is the end of our episode. Thank you again for spending time with me and sharing your story.
No worries. It's been really nice to chat with you today. And look, hopefully, the conversations, others have found it interesting. But I'm happy to accept the fact that people might have found it pretty boring too. But hey, it's all about acceptance, isn't it?
It is, yes. Thank you for wrapping that up. That's it for today's episode. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to hear your take on the chosen keyword. Have a lovely time, and thank you again for spending time with Humans of Authenticity. Until next time.